the Wildlife Observer Network.
The vibe was unbelievable, and of course having the challenge then, having been able to track the other cities and what was happening, everyone was doing it. It was really fun.
You are listening to Urban Wildlife Podcast. We are recording.
All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Urban Wildlife Podcast. We are sitting, well, actually, first I should say, this is Billy Brown, one of your co-hosts with
Tony Croasdale.
Tony, where are we sitting?
We are in the Urban Wildlife Podcast studio, a.k.a. my basement, my finished basement. It's a nice basement.
It's a nice basement.
And
we're comprehensive library of nature's books that I want to read all of.
Yeah, so this is my studio/library. We call this the Robeson Library. There's actually only two Robeson pieces in here. When this was in my old house, it had many more Josh Robeson artwork pieces in here, but we still continue the name. So this is where I keep all my books, my podcasting equipment, and a significant amount of my optics. And sometimes I come down here with my cat on my lap and I read books. A lot less than I'd like to, but that's the idea. A study, not a man cave. Yeah, so we got new equipment here. This is our debut of the new equipment. We haven't recorded the podcast since we have recorded the podcast since we got the new stuff, but we haven't set it up yet. Right. So this is the debut. We got new mics. We're wearing headphones. We have a new recorder. So we're excited. We'll see how this goes. This might not be. Hopefully, it's a dramatic increase in quality of audio, but this is a learning curve. So we will see what we do.
We've been doing this for like 5 years, and somehow right now it just feels so official.
It does. Having the headphones on, I think, really helps.
I got these microphones in front of us with the sort of springy supports on them so that if the table vibrates, you don't hear it in the microphone, which might sound like not a significant matter, but considering how many times we've had like an episode where like a little noise is creeping in, I'm like, what the hell is that? And then I realize it's the table vibrating. So having like there's these little bits of technology that obviously people have had this problem solved for decades, but still it's like.
But yeah, we are very excited to have this equipment, and thanks to our Patreon supporters for the contribution. Mostly, this is they contributed a significant portion of it, but yep. The vast bulk of it is because my beloved aunt died, and I inherited.
What was your aunt's name?
Aunt Joni.
Okay.
And she died, and I inherited a little bit of money, like $2,000, more than half of it, which I spent on podcasting.
It made the difference, yes.
Yes. But I think she would appreciate the investment in future, and
should we call it the Aunt Joni Studio?
Yeah, we could call it the Aunt Joni Studio. In fact, I have a piece of her artwork I want to hang up. She was really into embroidery.
We did an episode a few months ago called "We're Gonna Kick Tokyo's Ass," which was us talking about a bunch of things, but including the City Nature Challenge. And Tokyo is kind of arbitrary. I think in Philadelphia, every city's got their rivals, but in Philadelphia, we tend to pick on our bigger cities around us. New York, Washington, Boston.
Not that they're bigger than us, other than New York. You mean bigger in
the larger cities.
We're not picking on Harrisburg.
Right.
Yes.
We tend not to bother with Baltimore, especially if they're in the same division in sports. And so, the Mets from New York, either the Giants or the football team from Washington, whose name I don't like to say.
Yes.
And then, Boston, the Celtics in basketball are a traditional rival. So we have those rivalries. But I felt like this is a global competition. Let's take on the biggest city in the world. And so we were sort of looking at Tokyo.
Similar latitude.
Good point.
They're on the coast.
We have a lot of their species running invasive in our territory.
Yeah, they're actually a little bit south. I think climate-wise, a little bit south. So we're punching above. We're not we're punching up. We're not punching down. We're not picking on Duluth or Minneapolis. Totally landlocked and colder.
So we were going after Tokyo. We had pulled this together in a way we hadn't meant to going in. So we had thought that, and we'll leave them unnamed for now, a major institution in Philadelphia would be taking on the City Nature Challenge. They ended up not being able to do it. And so part of our group of nature buddies, you, me, Robin Irasari, and Naveen Sasi Kumar, we had been sort of lobbying on the outside to get Philadelphia to have a strong registration representation for it. So when the organization we thought was going to do it fell through, we had Naveen signed up as sort of the backup option, and then it turned out Naveen, as the official organizer for Philadelphia, was the only option. So we pulled together as a committee, and we reached out to everybody we can think of at the organizations around us in Philadelphia. Naveen on his own is like a force of nature on a naturalist. But so that was our group, and so we were just sort of organizing it as a volunteer committee. It turned into a lot of work in some ways, but I think fun work. And Philadelphia, in the end, placed really well. We were basically in the low, if you figure 150-something cities took part around the world, Philadelphia was in the, I forget, we're 23rd or 24th for number of observations. We were in a similar position for number of species, which was a head scratcher for me, frankly, because I was like, well, we'll talk about Cape Town in a second. A place like Cape Town should did and should kick everyone's butts in species totals, or a place like Rio de Janeiro or something like that. Some more tropical latitude city with a lot of biodiversity. But I think a lot of it is also just having people out there seeking out the taxa that they're good at or that they're interested in, and sort of getting up numbers of species that way. And so Philadelphia did great that way. But really what we placed in really well that I was impressed with was we were 16th for numbers of people. So we were, let me find the numbers. So Philadelphia, we had 565 people take part in the City Nature Challenge, which, if you think of and we did it, I think, with the help of a lot of partners as a whole lot of little events and walks and bio blitzes and stuff out there. But still, I would remember looking at it towards the end, and if anything, we were sort of gaining momentum through the competition. And the Monday, we ended up having a ton of people taking part and a ton of observations on the Monday. It went from Friday to Monday. And somehow on Monday, when I thought everybody was going to be back at work and putting away their smartphones with our Naturalist app and everything, we were still getting tons of people getting out there and finding stuff. So.
A mistake I made was
yes,
I organized programs with elementary school children. And they're not old enough to have their own iNaturalist account, so
I don't think it's a mistake.
I'm being ridiculous,
yeah.
But we had let's think about it. I did it with 4 classes, so you're talking 120 kids at least, just myself, and put it all under one account. So we could have added 100 more kids if it went with high schools and they had their own phones. So
yeah. I think but if we're taking the overall mission of getting people
right.
in the Philadelphia area or in cities around the world turned on to nature, then that's perfect. I think that's awesome.
If you think about it, most people aren't going out by themselves.
Yeah.
And there's we had how many? At least a dozen walks organized.
We had over 30 events.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm sure we had well north of 1,000 people engaged in that event.
I agree completely. Yeah. And I think these are what we hope, fingers crossed, and hopefully, is looking at next year and ways to do this throughout the year, which is what we do on this podcast and we do so many other ways, is hopefully people can take this kind of thing home and say, hey, that was a lot of fun walking around Aubrey Arboretum and trying to look at all the bugs and plants we could find and get back to their block and look at their back garden or what's growing out of the sidewalk and be what's that? And take a picture of that and see what it is on iNaturalist and keep it going. So that is our hope and dream for this. But as we were doing it, I was I can never really turn off the podcast brain completely. So I was thinking, okay, we should get some audio from other cities. And a few cities came through. We're going to listen to some of that now. We've got actually an old friend of the podcast, Peter Kleinhenz, who was on an early episode from 2015. That's how long we've been doing this, Tony. 2015, called Right Under Our Noses. He was talking about Kirtland's snakes in Cincinnati, Ohio. Turns out Peter is now in Tallahassee and was part of the City Nature Challenge team there. We also heard. Well, we're also going to hear from Kelly O'Donnell from our one of our nearest competitors in New York City, and they had a special Battle of the Boroughs. It turns out Manhattan, maybe this isn't too much of a spoiler, I don't know, but Manhattan swept in all three categories, with Staten Island getting the most improved award. I don't know. You look at it just strictly on like the kind of terrain. I would think like Queens or Bronx should clean up.
Or Brooklyn, because they have the Queens and Brooklyn are both on the coast, the ocean proper.
You got like marshlands. You've got like
Jamaica
uplands.
Bay.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. There's always next year. And then Maui, the last city participating, because it's the furthest to the west in the sense of getting closer to the international date line. So Christchurch, New Zealand was the first city taking part. I remember we woke up and we're like, Christchurch was like kicking butt. We're like, we didn't even thought about Christchurch. We were thinking like we had to think about San Francisco and LA, those kind of cities. But Christchurch was just like out of the gate really fast. And then on the back end, Maui was the final city.
Ow! Citizen science! All right, we are here at St. Mark's River Preserve State Park here in Leon County, where we're having the Leon County Tallahassee City Nature Challenge. This is the last day of our event, April 29th, and we've had all sorts of stuff going on. We've had bio blitzes, we've had a big community event all over the city of Tallahassee. And right now, myself, Peter Kleinhenz, Liz Schold, and Jerry Lindsay, all from FWC, are here in the middle of a swamp, far off of any trail. And Liz has just flipped a piece of wood to reveal a dwarf salamander, yet another one of the many, many salamander species found in Leon County. And we just recorded on iNaturalist. And what's really cool is we're excited because Leon County has a relatively low population and a relatively low area, and we are in the top 20 of species. So we're really trying to record as many species as we possibly can, get a lot more people connected to iNaturalist. We've just been having a blast. We've seen all kinds of cool stuff: swallowtail kites, corn snake, pitcher plants, and now the salamander. So we're excited about the challenge, and we hope to win.
This is Kelly O'Donnell. I am the Director of Science Forward at Macaulay Honors College, and I am the New York City organizer for the City Nature Challenge. I am standing in Lemon Creek Park in Staten Island. It's a little chilly. Heard some birds. Science Forward is what we call our science curriculum at Macaulay Honors College. It's also an open educational resource that we made. We developed it to promote the teaching of scientific thinking skills. Science Forward is interdisciplinary and it's skills focused so that students understand that there's this common set of skills that all scientists are using regardless of what kind of scientist they are. So that life scientists, physical scientists, everyone's kind of using the same set of skills, and that's what we want our students to practice. Science Forward is also an active curriculum because we want our students to learn science and how science works by doing science. And so to do that, in every fall, we have a bio blitz that all of our students participate in somewhere in the city. And then they use those data that they collected the bio blitz as part of an original research project. And that's why the City Nature Challenge is so great for us, because it gives us another chance in the spring to collect data from the city, to basically, use the city as our lab. And we can get some now, experienced Macaulay students to be iNaturalist pros to go around the city and help out at public events. And so that's why it's really great, and we really enjoy doing the City Nature Challenge. And today I am standing in Inwood Hill Park on the last day of the City Nature Challenge. And this year we are trying to do a battle of the boroughs to see which borough has or can find the most biodiversity. Currently Manhattan is in the lead, but we're hoping the rest of the boroughs catch up. Looks to be a gorgeous day. Inwood Hill Park is where we had our Macaulay Bio Blitz this year. It's a really cool place. It has the last piece of original forest on the island of Manhattan, so it's very fun to walk through.
Hey, this is John Starmer with Maui Nui Natural History on the island of Maui in the Hawaiian archipelago. We are in the town of Kihei on the southern side of Maui. And there's actually a night market going on in the shopping center next to us. And the drainage pond that's behind that shopping center is where we're set up. You can probably hear the black-necked stilt, the endemic and endangered IO, making a lot of racket next to us. I don't think they're happy about all the lights. I'll be quiet for a sec so you can hear them. A remarkable concentration of them too. There's probably 20 or 30 of these birds hanging out in probably less than a quarter of an acre of wetland here. But the reason we were here tonight was to check out some bugs. So we set up a night light, which is just a big white sheet with a UV light hanging in front of it. Started just as the sun went down, so there was still light in the sky. But as soon as we turned this on, it was amazing. We just sort of ended up with a white sheet that looked a little bit like a chocolate chip cookie. Lots of beetles all over it. And as it got darker, we've just seen much larger amount of diversity. We've gotten all kinds of beetles, ladybird beetles, a bunch of black ones that I just don't even know the names of, a lot of different kinds of flies. We've gotten a bunch of different types of ants, certainly some termites and probably some carpenter ants. A lot of different moths, earwigs, just really remarkable diversity. So this has been a really cool way to get the wildlife to come to us rather than us going out and looking for it. So we'll probably do another station or two as the City Nature Challenge progresses. But this is the end of day one of the City Nature Challenge. We're the last city. New Zealand is going to wake up tomorrow and continue on with day two. And just having a lot of fun with this so far, and looking forward to the next 3 days. Hey, this is John Starmer here with Maui Nui Natural History, and we are in the middle of the City Nature Challenge on the island of Maui, over by the Kealia Pond National Wildlife Refuge. And we're doing our little meetup / bio blitz here. We're over by the ponds, and lots of cool wildlife going on. We're watching some wandering darner dragonflies laying eggs in the shallows of the pond. We're looking at some endemic coots, and we've got what we assume are some vagrant laughing gulls, so not regular visitors that we just spotted off in the distance, but lots of wonderful bird life, which is really what the pond's all about. We've got some black-crowned night herons. We've got the black-necked stilt, the endemic IO, and we've been lucky to have one of the volunteers here at the park, Mr. Sunny Gampona, has been pointing out both invasive stuff that they're trying to clear out and some of the natives, and we've also had the chance to look at some restoration projects that have been going on. So really a pretty good, cool day here on day 2 of the City Nature Challenge.
The city that just annihilated everybody in observations, and a lot on species, was Cape Town. And as soon as we saw it, I think we all had the same kind of of course. Because I think we all, I'll start by saying, I know reptiles and amphibians. I think the Cape region's got some interesting tortoises, for example, and some other stuff like that. But you'd make up your numbers in the City Nature Challenge with bugs and plants. Tony Rebelo, who I interviewed for this episode, is going to talk about that, about why there's so many darn plant species in the Cape.
Yes, I'm Tony Rebelo. I work for the South African National Biodiversity Institute, where I'm a researcher, a bit of a jack of all trades. So I do all sorts of things, from GIS to conservation planning to monitoring to restoration, basically anything that needs to be done that requires a little bit of scientific backup for other teams within SANBI.
When we in Philadelphia were watching the leaderboard totals pile up early on, we were not at all surprised about the biodiversity that you guys were documenting in the City Nature Challenge, but Honestly, we were a little bit surprised by just the numbers of people. Not all of our listeners will be so familiar with the biodiversity of the Cape. So could you please give a quick introduction to why you would find so many species in the Cape Town area?
Okay, well, the Cape flora is quite special. I don't think we really know why it is so rich, but it's on the southern tip of Africa. It's, if you like, a historical flora that survived when Africa migrated north. And it not only survived, but it's coupled with a really nutrient-poor soil. We have the Cape supergroup, which includes some sandstones, which are huge, immense layers of sand, effectively pure glass. So most plants can't grow on it. So there's a highly specialized flora which occurs on it. And it happens to be a flora that's related to species in Australia. And there's an odd few species in South America. And presumably there would have been a good flora in Antarctica of the same group. And because of the topography and the way the Cape Fold Belt got fragmented, it's effectively a whole series of islands on the mainland of this really poor soil. So it's a series of islands, and if you like, it's an island flora. So every patch you go to has its own endemics, its own specials. And so we're sitting with over 9,000 species of plant in the Cape flora. That's 1 in every 5 species in Africa occurs in the Cape flora, and the Cape flora is less than 0.6% of the area of Africa. So it's a minute area that plays way above its weight. And Cape Town is situated on the one end of that, but it's the rich end. So we've got 2 centers of endemism for the sandstone fynbos, and so we've probably got in the order of 3,700 species of plant which occur here naturally. And then we also have a whole lot of aliens due to our history, European aliens from the Mediterranean, aliens from Australia. So we're probably adding another 800 to 1,000 plant species onto that in terms of alien, a lot of them invasive, a lot of them problems. So we have a very rich flora. But we mustn't forget that the same thing happened in the sea. So we also have a very rich marine life. So False Bay, which is in Cape Town, has over 1,000 species of fish and invertebrates. And we have a very active diving community as well. So that was a surprise to me. I was not aware of that when we entered the challenge. I only discovered that, in fact, because of the challenge.
So where did you get all the people?
Well, we didn't get as many people as we hoped. We had hoped to get people. But yeah, we have a slight advantage. In the 1980s, end of 1980s, 1990s, we ran what was called the Proteatlas Project, which was an attempt to get citizen scientists to go up and map our proteas. Now, proteas are really charismatic. You grow lots of them in California and Hawaii, so you know all about them. And we managed to get people excited about them. So in the end, we had about 1,000 teams in the Cape flora running around, monitoring them, looking where they occur, looking at their phenology, when they grow, when they produce flowers. And that came to the end in about 2012. And these people were left around with nothing to do, and they got really frustrated. And in the end, the National Red List assessors decided, no, we can use these people. And so they created the custodians of rare and endangered wildflowers. And effectively, they got those people to go out and monitor the threatened species in the country. So in Cape Town, we have a very high proportion of threatened species because of the aliens, because of the urbanization and agriculture, and because we're just so rich. So there was lots of work, lots of stuff. And over the years, they built up into very efficient and very well-trained, almost an elite team who go out and monitor species at all times of the year. So we had this group with us, and we were able to, we tap into them and say, hey, look, we're going to be doing this, except, of course, we're doing it at exactly the wrong time of the year. This is the worst possible time we could participate in a challenge for biodiversity because nothing's flowering. Virtually, the end of summer's come, everything's dry, beginning of the cold winter, our rains haven't arrived. It's going to be impossible to achieve the target. And they took it to task. They know where all those species are. They went and hunted them down. So even though there were no flowers and some of them aren't even in leaves, they were able to get those species. And then coupled with that, we also have the Wildlife and Environmental Society of South Africa, most of our nature reserves in the town have a WESA group, a friends group, and that helps them with their management, the alien clearing, and the school groups that come to visit the reserves. So we were able to mobilize them as well. They happened to have their first meeting for the year at the same time that we decided we were actually going to take part in the challenge. And when we announced it, they took this as one of their goals and one of their ways of getting involved. So we had two really good big teams participating. And then the Scouts came on board. They said, this is fun, we want to do it. We want to do it throughout the whole country. We had to say, whoa, this is only Cape Town. And they said, okay, well, we'll do it in Cape Town on condition that you roll it out to the rest of the country over the next few years. So, yeah, we have a bit of a challenge ahead of us. And the Scouts, in the end, produced 10% of our data, which is an amazing achievement. But, yeah, we didn't get our numbers up. We were hoping to get 2,000 people, because that's what we estimated we'd need, and we only got half of that. So we really didn't accomplish our goal of getting lots and lots of people involved. But the people who did get involved were really fascinated. And I think it all happened on that first night. So we started off, well, we weren't ready yet. When we came on, Christchurch was there, Hong Kong was there, and then we came and put on our stuff and then went to bed. And the next morning we were still there. And I think that made the difference. That got everyone really excited to realize that, we could do it. It was possible to do it. So we had a target of 40,000 observations, but that's what we needed to win. And we weren't realistically expecting anything more than about 15,000. And it was that morning when we got up and realized that, hey, we're still in the lead. We can do this. That I think got really everyone excited. And yeah, everyone just mucked in. It was amazing. The vibe was unbelievable. And of course, having the challenge then, having been able to track the other cities and what was happening, everyone was doing it. It was really fun. We realized that if we want to get our numbers up, we're going to have to target the schools. And that was not really, I wouldn't consider it a major success. We had some really good schools which really participated fantastically, but I don't think we managed to get the buy-in of all the teachers. So that, I think, if we do it next year, that'll be our target. So we did have the schools coming into the nature reserves, and they were shown that and explained that, but then they leave, and the motivation for the actual event didn't materialize. But, it's part of the problem is that the schools that go to the nature reserves tend to be the under-resourced schools. So they are the ones who don't have the cell phones, they don't have the Wi-Fi connections and the stuff to actually participate in this. This is very much a first world activity. And our first world component is quite small.
Well, so I'd like you to talk about that, because it's something that I know we thought about in Philadelphia, which is that we knew that we would be, and this was our first year, and didn't do nearly as well. No one did nearly as well as you guys, but we didn't do nearly as well as you guys. But we knew that we could get sort of the educated folks who read the same kinds of websites as we do, and the same kind of listen to the same radio stuff that we knew how to get on the air with. But I don't know that we did a great job of reaching beyond our social circles. And so I was just curious about this. I mean, you just mentioned that about the under-resourced schools being ones that you got out but didn't have the technology. What does the demographics look like for your more elite core of naturalists who go out there and do the surveying and the friends group? I mean, do you see like the broad sweep of Cape Town society involved there, or does it tend to be better educated, whiter, et cetera, folks doing it?
Well, I think we have a problem that's possibly common to societies throughout the world, but certainly in the Western world, in that most of our demography is old, white, female people who take part, so and rich. So it's your people who've retired. The men die, so that leaves us with the women, and they carry on and do this. So our task is, well, our challenge for decades now has been to try and get the youth involved. And I think that's the fun of this sort of challenge. It's technology that the kids understand, cell phones. It's a way of trying to get the kids involved. And I don't know if we succeeded, but we certainly had enough of the kids to teach the old people how to use it and get them involved and excited. So I would prefer if we could get more people, and I think that's the way going forward. The challenge is a great tool for bringing people together and getting them excited. And I think that's its potential as we see it. So we do tend to be aging upper class societies, but this is a way of bringing in other groups. And we did identify right from the start that the technology would be a challenge. So the City of Cape Town came on board with its library network, and they made their libraries available to anyone who wanted to come and upload and do stuff. But I think still that the fact that the other thing that we have that you guys wouldn't understand is that we have to pay for data. We don't get free data. You can't just go and on your street corner or something and get your latest stuff off the net and stuff. We actually have to pay for it. So it's a little bit more tricky. So that's where the schools, where the libraries came in and provided a free upload service. And especially for kids. It's quite expensive to upload lots of pictures.
Thank you. I didn't realize that. Okay. Do you have any thoughts on what you'd like to do differently next year?
It would be really grand if we could run it in our spring. The problem with getting people out there, kids and their parents and their friends, is that it's dry, it's dull, it's boring. Only oxalis is beginning to flower, and it's only the beginning of its season. So it's very limited. It'd be lovely to do it in our spring when we have hundreds of species in full flower, and the veld absolutely looks magnificent. So I think that's one of our goals, to try and work out a system whereby perhaps in the future we would have at least some competitions in which we can compete in our spring. But now I've forgotten the question.
Oh, just sort of plans for next year, that kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. The other thing that really came out in the analysis afterwards, it's amazing, is that our crew and Wessa groups managed to get about 65% of our species, of our plant species, which is really phenomenal considering that less than 100 species were in flower. So, yeah, I think that if we do it in spring, we're going to have a different sort of challenge, that everyone's going to be chasing the pretty flowers, and to try and to keep them focused on the species is going to be an interesting little problem.
Hey, so I have a quick question for you then. Not challenge related, but you talked about how people are chasing the pretty flowers. Is there a species of plant that is maybe less obviously charismatic that you might like to tell our listeners about, that is a favorite of yours, even if it isn't the showiest plant in the Fynbos?
No, I'm afraid I like the big and the glamorous. But it just so happened that the challenge coincided with Maris Modi's Day. And Maris Modi's Day is a crew activity. It is a public holiday. And they go out into the Swartveld. Swartveld means black veld, because at this time of the year it's just grey and boring. And they go looking for a little species of daisy that flowers. And they go because it's boring. And so they need to go and try and find it. It turns out that we've got 8 species of Maris Modis in our area, most of them rare, some of them critically endangered. And so they go hunting for this. So a fair size of our actual crew groups actually left the city and to go and explore in the areas nearby looking for this plant, which they do every year. And it just so happens that the people who stayed behind, we discovered a couple of new populations of Maris Modis. But it's nothing to write home about. It's a teeny weeny daisy. You can't tell even when it's flowering. The flowers are so small and inconspicuous.
All right. Well, still, I'm going to go look that up. So thank you. I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. And you've given Philadelphia something to shoot for next year, for sure.
I don't think it would have been nearly as much fun without other cities in the world taking part. Being able to look at what you guys were doing, find out, and to realize that one is part of a huge team out there going and all doing the same thing. That was really brilliant. It was really a fun time. We thoroughly enjoyed it. I just need to take my hats off to the City of Cape Town. The conservation biology staff, the reserve managers, everyone just came out in full flow. Everyone embraced the idea. It was really stunning. It was a real fun activity.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, enjoy your afternoon too.
Take care.
Oh, sorry, morning.
The whole day's in front of me. Yeah.
Up.
All right. Thanks.
Just that last visit our last episodes were on Kenya, and that was my only time to Africa.
There you go. All right.
We were that was our plan for a honeymoon, was we wanted to go to Africa. And we figured we wanted to go to South Africa to do Cape Town and to do Kruger. because Angie's really she's a maritime attorney, so she really likes the ocean.
Oh, of course.
And we wanted to do safari, so we figured we hit a few days in Kruger,
Get it all,
and then we go and like do we might even do shark diving, who knows, or we'd see all the albatrosses and penguins and all the incredible life down there.
And the part that I hadn't realized, and I did a little research into La Paz, Bolivia, which also ended up placing really highly, sort of out of nowhere from my perspective, but I shouldn't have been so surprised. These are urban areas with pre-existing citizen science networks. So people who are already kind of out there volunteering to document biodiversity locally, so that when the City Nature Challenge came around, these are places that could then be like, hey guys, this is something we already do. Let's get out there these dates and like find as much as we can. I wanted to just quick shout out to Laurel. How do you say your last name? Laurel Series?
I think so.
Yep. So Laurel, who we interviewed, I think this is 2016, in an episode that was partly about urban caracals, because she's a, I forget what her position is specifically, but with the Urban Caracal Project, which is still going. I've been following them on Facebook ever since, looking at the caracals, which are, how would you describe them? You're the cat guy.
They are, I believe they're felis, so they're the same genus as house cats. So they're a small, like bobcat to our, if we're going to be North American centric, lynx, bobcat sized.
Yeah.
Cat, we're talking about 30 pounds. Fox size, really, maybe a little bit bigger.
30 pounds is like coyote size, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, more like coyote size.
Solid animal, yeah.
Yeah, 20, 30 pounds.
With these like neat tipped, like long hair tipped ears.
Yeah.
Hats off to all these cities, and hats off to the City Nature Challenge organizers. This is something that, like, I think we like to gripe a little bit about, like, man, I wish this had been like, if it had been like the end of May instead of April, we could have found so much more stuff, or like this way or that way that it could be improved. But this is something that got started almost by accident a few years ago with San Francisco and LA basically having a friendly competition, and it just grew from there. People get a lot of credit for trying to invent something or create something from scratch, but I think people should also get just as much credit for like recognizing like something with potential and then like running with it. And it's totally what they've done. And it's and I we're all for that mission of trying to get people more connected with their wildlife and with the plants and fungi and slime molds. I learned more about slime molds in this process, by the way, because I kept saying, like, it's tempting to say plants, animals, and fungi, and then you're like, but wait, there's other visible forms of life that you can find. And when I was at Bartram's Gardens, LJ Brubaker's been on the podcast recently from Bartram's, and we were at Bartram's and we found, I forget what, some kind of chocolate. They all got, the slime molds have great names. And this is like chocolate something slime mold. There's raspberry slime mold. Dog's vomit is one that I've seen before in Philadelphia also, which looks like kind of this fluorescent yellow crust on a log. And they might be, my understanding is they're not necessarily monophyletic, like they're not necessarily all closely related to each other, but that there are different forms where you've got like single-celled creatures in your head. Think of something kind of like an amoeba maybe, that like can live in a diffuse individual form, but then can also like come together into one mass and then like navigate the world together, and form like breeding or breeding structures and stuff. And it's just like something that can go from like single celled to like a mass and then coordinate is just a really cool concept. And it's something that like isn't just funny, like it's called dog vomit, but that like this is a concept that you can like tap into and observe on like a trail, but be at Bartram's Gardens, an old plant nursery that dates back like 300 years.
Yeah.
Or you can go to like, I saw the Baxter Trail was the one where I saw the dog vomit slime mold in Northeast Philly, which is like this, kind of like post-industrial riverfront area. So like you can get out in very urban areas and see some really cool stuff. I want to make sure we thank again Tony Rebelo from Cape Town, Kelly O'Donnell from New York City, Peter Kleinhenz from Tallahassee, and John Starmer from Maui. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Tony Rebelo, for the interview. We really appreciate it, especially when we're coordinating across like a whole bunch of time zones. And then especially, for John, Peter, and Kelly for going out there in the field and recording some audio for us while they were out there doing their City Nature Challenge stuff. So we appreciate that so much.
And I want to thank Steiner Optics for personally sponsoring me, but also sponsoring our World Series of Birding team.
Right on. All right. So until next time, thanks for listening.
Thank you. Cheers.